With us now, we want to bring in Pamela Livingston. She is a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapy for couples and adults in transition, and the author of The Recipe for Change. Pamela, great to have you with us. How are you today? So, Pamela, can I ask you, how have you been doing over the past year and a half? It seems like you're well adapt to, or well equipped to adapt to all the change that we've been having.
Change has been part of my life since I was a young woman. And so for me, this last year and a half gave me an opportunity to continue doing all of my work. I didn't stop. And I also wrote my book.
Oh, well, then you made good use of your time.
I did.
So tell us more about your book.
My book is about helping people make change. We all have a life script, and it goes with us all of our entire life until we address it. And I encourage all of my patients, and I wrote this book to help other people to think about the areas that hurt them, that trouble them, that make them sad, or they constantly are overthinking things or punishing themselves because they didn't say the right thing at the right moment, to help them understand how they can do something about it. I developed a method. That method is called the 4 S's plus 1. And I believe this method can help a lot of people make change. I'm all about change.
And do you find that some people go with the flow, but other people are very much stuck in their routines and they don't like change?
Well, nobody likes change. I haven't found anybody who really embraces change in a loving way, you might say. But what I have found is that people are more interested in change when they realize how much pain they've been in and how long that pain's been there. Let me just give you an example, okay? Let's just say that you go to a meeting, and then the minute you leave that meeting, you're in your car and you're beating yourself up because, oh, I should have said this, or I should have said that, or, I wish I would have done it this way. Oh, they're going to think I'm stupid. Oh, I'm stupid. Now, somebody who does that on an ongoing basis is not a happy person.
So what do you think the biggest things are that stop people from being open to change?
Fear. Simply fear. They're fearful of the unknown. They kind of get comfortable in their uncomfortableness is what I call it. You're comfortable hurting all the time. You're comfortable with the anxiety. You're comfortable with the depression. You get comfortable with it. It still hurts. It's not a full, rich life. You're not happy, but you're comfortable. You don't have to deal with the fear.
So tell us more about the 4 S's.
The 4 S's, of course, 4 S's plus 1. The 4 S's, the first S is self-awareness. And without self-awareness, you have nothing. You have to have self-awareness. Self-awareness means that you're paying attention to that negative voice that's in your head all the time, or that's criticizing you, or you're obsessing about something. I once worked with a person who was just constant, every little thing that they did, they obsessed about. And it's like, that's not a happy life. So without being aware that's what you're doing, you can't move forward. You can't make change. So the second S is building self-confidence. With a little more self-worth, you build self-confidence. You start believing in yourself. You start believing that you're a good person, that you can accomplish, that you can do things. And then, of course, the third S is self-worth. You develop a little self-worth. You start feeling better about yourself. You treat yourself better. You respect yourself. And, of course, the fourth S is self-love. Now, lots of times when I say self-love, people say, gosh, that's that, self-love like Valentine's. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you treating yourself with kindness and respect. You're treating yourself like you treat other people, that you count, that you're important, that you're valuable. And of course, the plus S is self-discipline. Without self-discipline, you can't accomplish anything. You have to be able to focus. You have to be able to decide, I'm going to give to myself. I'm going to start paying attention to those negative messages. I'm going to start paying attention to how I treat other people, because maybe that's how I was treated in my life script. And so I've learned to treat people that way, but They don't like it. I don't have very many friends. So it's learning to understand yourself. I believe this method can help a lot of people. It's a little book, okay? The Recipe for Change. It's something that you can go back to, like your favorite old recipe. You can go back to self-worth and read that chapter and go, oh gosh, I got to start paying closer attention. Or maybe you're paying attention, but now you're struggling with feeling worth around that. So then you go back to the self-worth chapter and you read that. It's like your favorite old recipe. You can go back to it. It can help you stay on track to have a happier, fuller life.
Pamela Livingston with us here on the MegaCast. She's a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapy for couples and adults in transition, and the author of The Recipe for Change. And I recently was listening to a podcast, and the one thing they mentioned when you're reading a book, to mark the page of the book until you fully grasp it. Because we see so many people that will devour these self-help books and really not change with it. It's like, no, read it until you embody it.
Well, for me, I didn't write this is 90 pages. So people are going to be able to read it quickly. They're going to be able to go back to it. It's broken up in a way that you can go back to the chapter that you need to go back to. I made the print a little bit larger.
We like larger print once we're over 40, by the way.
Well, I listened to what my patients have been saying for 40 years, telling me that when the book is too many words, too much, too thick, they can't get through it. They get lost in it. I tried to do something simplistic so that just anyone who wants to make change could pick it up easily and make change.
Yeah, so you say you help adults in transition. What exactly do you mean by transition? Is that just anyone who's looking to make change, or elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay, transition is interesting. Okay, so people going through a divorce, they're going through a transition. People who have lost a spouse or a child, they're going through a transition. People who are, young kids going off to college, that's a huge transition. And I've worked with many of those kinds of young adults going off to that big transition. They're adults now. They're going to be on their own. Their loss of a job, that's a huge transition. Not being able to find a job, that's a huge transition. There's so many transitions in one's life. And I try to help people during those difficult times.
So with that, Pamela, can we talk a little bit about the last year and a half with the COVID-19 crisis? Change has been pushed upon us, even for so many of us that didn't want to change. How does someone grow from that experience?
Well, I think that each and every day we're offering opportunities to evaluate our life and evaluate how we're living our life and change is forced upon us this last year and a half. And I don't even know if we should say last year and a half. I think it's ongoing. Right now, there's a lot of concern. My husband works at the Apple Store at Somerset, and it's like
bless his heart. Can I tell you, I spent a lot of time over the past couple weeks at the Apple Store. Bless his heart.
So one day you got a mask, the next day you're not. One day you got the wall, the next day you don't. The next day you're working from home, the next day you're not. So I think that all of us in different ways are going through a transition. And I don't think it's going to stop. I don't see it stopping yet. I think we have to just tell ourselves that it's going to be okay, that we're going to manage the storm and we're going to get through it. And the more that we can soothe ourselves, it's going to be easier for us to work our way through the storm.
So with that, Pamela, if I can ask, I mean, the one thing that's constant in life, taxes and death and change. Like a change, we all experience change every single day. When should someone understand when they need to seek out professional help from a therapist such as yourself, and when they can deal with it themselves, because change is inevitable?
I think the biggest factor that circles around that particular question is insurance. I think there are a lot of people out there hurting. I get a lot of phone calls wanting to get into therapy, because they have struggles in their life, but they have no insurance. When you don't have insurance and you don't have the money to pay for it, it's harder. It's harder in our society. So I think that's kind of an interesting question. I think that there's a lot of people hurting, and those who have insurance or the funds to be able to go to therapy sooner or later find their way to therapy. People who are in pain, don't have insurance, don't know how to work the system to get help, those people stay in pain. They might want to make change, but they can't make change.
So what does it take to make a lifelong change? I think I read somewhere once before, is it 14 days to change a habit or 30 days?
Well, I think that it takes 3 to 6 months to really, if a person is focusing on one particular area in their life, okay, I think that it takes 3 to 6 months to really dedicate yourself to that particular area. But, you know, we're talking about issues here around change that have much deeper roots. You know, superficial change can be made in, 14 days. You can stop drinking Coca-Cola in 14 days. But if you constantly beat yourself up and are hard on yourself, it's going to take longer than that to lose those, choose change and develop new behavior patterns.
Pamela Livingston with us here on the MegaCast. She's a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapy for couples and adults in transition, and the author of The Recipe for Change. And Pamela, can I ask you, how has it been for you with business through the pandemic? Because sadly, we have heard domestic violence is up because of the COVID-19 crisis. So many couples are having a hard time navigating the crisis that we're in, but also they're spending a lot more time together as well, and the stress. So have you been busy trying to address more couples and families and dealing with the crisis?
Of course. I've during the whole shutdown, I worked all online. I saw all of my patients online, and I did see that there a certain amount of stress. Some people were able to weather that, and other couples were not. I worked with people who were, at the end of the day, they gave the relationship up. It was a difficult time. It is a difficult time.
So you talk about different types of change, and you mentioned the example of, okay, sure, you can stop drinking Coca-Cola in 14 days, but that's different than a lifelong change. And with your book, The Recipe for Change, how do you distinguish the difference in coping mechanisms and dealing with a change like stopping drinking or eating something versus going through a divorce? Because obviously those situations are very, very different, but do you still handle them in similar ways?
Well, I think that really The Recipe for Change, my book, is about helping people make lifelong change. Okay. I think more people are able to decide, hey, Coca-Cola isn't good for me. My doctor tells me I shouldn't drink it. It's got too much sugar. I'm going to just stop drinking it. And they're able to do that. Okay. But lifelong habits and behavior patterns, that's really what I address in my book, For the Recipe of Change. Okay. It talks more about lifelong patterns that you developed when you were much younger, and you've kept those patterns and they've grown up with you and become more destructive. And so in my book, I'm addressing lifelong patterns that have created stress and dysfunction throughout your life.
Pamela Livingston with us here on the MegaCast. Pamela, how can people find the book and more information if they're interested in trying to connect with you to get services?
You can find my book on Amazon. It's right there. Just type in The Recipe for Change, Pamela Livingston, and it'll pop right up.
Hey, what was it like for you to write the book and to actually publish it?
Let me tell you, I have a story, okay? I'm a 74-year-old woman who was on welfare. I had 2 children. I was very lost. I came from a family that didn't believe women should be educated. I found my way to education. That was my first step to change. So I am a person who believes in change more than anything else, all right? I think you have to decide that your life is a life that you don't like anymore, and that you can do something about it. And that's what I'm here to tell anyone who's listening. If you're in pain right now and you've been in pain, you can do something about it. There is no magic wands, there's no magic quilts. You have to get up and you have to decide, I'm going to do something about it. And then you can make change.
And it starts with believing in yourself and taking those steps to make it happen.
Yes.
Well, Pamela, it's been such a pleasure having you with us here on the MegaCast. We so appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.